Victoria, is everything all right? People talk or say things.
Hello?
Why didn't you tell me it was out of order? I suppose you think that's funny.
I'm not allowed out the front door.
Who says you weren't?
Them.
Who?
Them.
It was terrible out there. I could hear breathing.
We told you.
Are you worried about the man?
They hate us. That's the truth. They want to kill and torture every one of us. You can see it in their eyes.
Come now, Frederick. Do you dream about unholy things?
I really don't know what's going on here. There's something wrong, and that's a fact.
Wait. What did you dream last night? This manifestation of evil. You must be delivered from evil.
Brown-haired albino was unbuttoning his coat, his eyes on Cermak, who was shaking hands with Roosevelt.
Well, it's wonderful to see you, Tony. A lovely gesture.
I just wanted to remind you and your administration that you have my full and enthusiastic support.
The albino assassin was reaching under his coat, but I grabbed his arm and pulled it away, and his hand came back empty, the gun still under his arm as his coat flapped. I buried a fist in his belly and doubled him over. And when he came up, the snout of my 9mm stared him in the face.
You got you this time, fucker!
Sounded like firecrackers, and the muzzle flash above the crowd looked like fireworks, but this was something else. Blurred figures in the crowd were falling, and a stubby, bushy-haired brown little man in a white shirt standing up on a bench was swarmed like a come-to-Jesus meeting got out of hand. Meanwhile, the ex-blonde was pulling away, and I swung at him, and he went down, unconscious, as the mass of people around us were heading to my right. I moved against the tide towards Cermak, pushing, shoving, and got to that touring car where Miller and Lang were crouched over the fallen Cermak, red spreading from his left side under his unbuttoned suit coat.
Where? Where were the goddamn bodyguards?
I had the blonde, Your Honor. He didn't fire the round. Some bushy-haired little creep.
This was no time to tell him he'd been shot by his son-in-law's gardener.
What the hell? They got me after all, Heller.
The crowd was turning into a mob. Miller, Lang, and I were hovering over Cermak in the quiet of the storm.
Heller, get your people out of the way. We need to move the president and his vehicle out of here. For Christ's sakes, Cermak's been shot. Take him with you. Get him to a hospital.
Roosevelt, sitting in back, heard me.
Put Tony in here and get us the hell out.
The shooter's big revolver was clicking on an empty chamber now. But that must have had an 8-round rod, as I found myself on a battlefield where bleeding audience members wandered like wounded warriors, helped by their dazed loved ones.
Although edited for television, tonight's thriller contains scenes of suspense and violence which may be unsuitable for young viewers. Parental discretion is advised.
Robservations with Robert Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your evangelist of the imagination, and the perhaps never to be found, I can't even speak, never to be defined existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, moi, Robert Meyer Burnett. I'm, of course, Rob, casting at you, you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. This is, of course, Robservations episode number 1050. It is. It's 1050. And it is Comic-Con Eve, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gentle beings, kind souls, however you identify across these, the 28 known galaxies. Tomorrow is preview night at Comic-Con. I was generously invited by McFarlane Toys to go to a special invite-only soiree beginning at 1 o'clock tomorrow, but I won't be able to make it. It's too bad, you know? Even when I get invited to swanky Comic-Con parties. And I know, swanky and Comic-Con don't usually go together, but in my mind they do. Every Comic-Con party is swanky. And I guess there's a lot of good ones this year, you know? There's no Wired Cafe. If you know, you know. I'm just saying. I miss it. If I was rich, I would throw my own Wired. I would buy the Wired. I'd buy Wired from Wired. I mean, not just to use that a couple days, you know. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Boy, those are the headiest days of Comic-Con, but those days are long after us. But anyway, going to be a lot to talk about during Comic-Con. A lot of things are getting rolled out. A lot of good panels. I'm doing 1985 Best Geek Year Ever and the Inglorious Trexperts. Oh, wait a minute. This happens. I will be doing 4 panels, as I was saying. On Thursday, I will be doing the 1985 Greatest Geek Year Ever, which is, we've been talking about this for a long time. After that, the Inglorious Trexperts panel. And then Friday, I'm doing a panel where I am interviewing Max Allan Collins, who wrote our audio drama True Noir, The Assassination of Anton Cermak, that was the best thing I've ever directed, I think. And it was great to work with Max. We will be speaking at 4 o'clock at Comic-Con. He's officially a Comic-Con guest of honor. And I want to give a shout out to Kelly Goto, my good friend Kelly Goto, that we went to high school together. We were on student council together. She is nominated for an Eisner Award for a book she did called Seattle Samurai that is about her father, her late father Sam, who it turns out he was a Japanese immigrant to this country. He was interned in a Japanese internment camp during World War II, but then he went on to be quite successful. But he also had his own comic strip that he drew. And she did a beautiful book about her father and about that comic strip called Seattle Samurai, up for an Eisner Award. So that'll happen on Friday night if she wins. Fingers crossed. You go, Kelly. She's in charge of Godo Media. She's an incredibly impressive individual, and writing a book about her father is just one of her many accomplishments. She's been on the cutting edge of web design, and amazing woman. And then on Sunday, I can't believe we're still doing this. Since 2002, we have been doing, and we have been ending Comic-Con. It was supposed to be a one-off panel, but we've been doing it now since 2002. Starship Smackdown. I can't believe people still come to Starship Smackdown. I can't believe 1 year Neil deGrasse Tyson came. And by the way, NPR even did a story on our panel, Starship Smackdown. You can look it up. I mean, unless they've taken it down because NPR has been defunded by our government. But there is a story called One Starship to Rule Them All about our panel, Starship Smackdown. Go figure. I think there's a YouTube link, too. You can see Neil deGrasse Tyson defending the original Enterprise. It was a big moment in my life, actually. You never know what's going to happen at Comic-Con. I could write a book about everything that's happened to me at Comic-Con. But I'll refrain from regaling you with those stories. Many I can't tell in mixed company. But, right, is someone going to get me for saying the word mixed company? Is that fallen out of favor? Doesn't matter. Anyway, Superman. Let's talk some Superman. First of all, how great is it we're getting a Fantastic Four movie that people can finally seem to agree on? I think it's pretty cool. I'm really excited. Can't wait to see it. Can't wait to see Galactus. Everyone, without fail, has mentioned that Galactus is not only in the movie and done so well, but is actually terrifying. People keep using the word terrifying the way Galactus should be. I was terrified of Galactus when I was a kid. So that's pretty... I'm excited. I'm very excited to see... I just don't know when I'm going to see it because I didn't go to any of the screenings. And it doesn't open until Thursday. I'll be at Comic-Con, then I'm at Comic-Con on Friday. Saturday I have to come back for a birthday, and then I'm back at Comic-Con on Sunday, so I might not get to see Fantastic Four until until Monday. And that's unacceptable. I'll have to figure something out. But it's nice that people are excited about something collectively. That collective fandom can be excited about something. Rather than bitch and moan and complain about it. But I'm going to talk about bitching and moaning and complaining in this episode. And I want to start by talking about, well, I'm going to talk about mostly Superman. For those of you keeping score, Superman has now grossed, well, domestic, we only get foreign grosses once a week, but domestic grosses and foreign grosses that we already have, Superman, I believe, is up to 416 million worldwide in 11 days, which by any metric is very successful. despite what people say. I'll tell you something. There's a lot of people in my life that haven't liked me. Thought I was a loudmouth. Thought I was a douchebag. Said, you call me what you want. But I have never been heaped. I've never had such abuse heaped on me by anyone as much as I have with Superman fans, which is odd. I mean, it's bizarre to me that fandom, like the one thing that when I was growing up, fandom always brought people together. It wasn't, fans were not sniping at each other. They weren't divisive or divisive, depending on what you want to say. But they weren't that way to one another, especially over something that we all like. You would think that Superman is the one thing that everybody likes. But apparently, various flavors of Superman are the platter du jour, which is odd to me, I guess, because I grew up with comic books, and I read all kinds of different incarnations of Superman, and I grew up watching the Adventures of Superman TV series with George Reeves. Then we got the Super Friends animated series. The first season were the Wendy and Marvin episodes that were an hour long. Plastic Man and the Flash appeared in there. Remember the Geek Computer? Remember that? Remember that episode? And then, of course, we got Shazam and Isis on Saturday mornings. We were living good, eating well. And then, of course, in 1978, the world was changed by Superman, the movie, or just Superman. One of the things that I said one of my favorite scenes in any Superman movie, indeed one of my favorite scenes in any fantasy film of all, is when Lois Lane interviews Superman on the roof of her impossibly opulent apartment for New York on a reporter's salary. But anyway, so if you remember the scene, Superman lands, and it's this beautiful outdoor deck, and Lois Lane comes out, and she's wearing this kind of nice pink outfit or whatever, and she sits down to interview Superman. Clearly, because this was a more mature time, and people were adults. Superman was an adult, Lois Lane was an adult. The audience, even an 11-year-old kid like myself, was more adult than the audiences of today, apparently. So in this scene, it starts out, it's a beautifully written scene because a couple things there. It's a Basil exposition scene where Lois Lane is trying to figure things out about Superman, but she's clearly smitten by his power. She is a woman totally enamored of Superman. I mean, that woman, every part of her was moist, if you know what I'm saying. She was ready to go because Christopher Reeve's Superman was a very handsome specimen of male, plus he flew and super strength. He's the ultimate provider. Talk about the ultimate hunter-gatherer. He's exactly the kind of person that women would love everywhere. So Lois Lane is trying to interview him, but she's fighting against her own human nature. Like, she is basically ready to tear off his clothes and run into bed. And, she's looking into his eyes, his big blue eyes, and, she's so enamored. There's great moments where she's like, do you... And he, leans forward. Like, what's she going to say? Do you eat? Because she's... Oh, of course I eat, when I'm hungry. And it's a wonderful scene. And when Lois Lane finds out he has X-ray vision, she says, what color are my underpants? And he can't see through lead. And you find out that, so it's a cute scene where she's being a little bit seductive, but she knows she has to ask him a question that if he's lying, he wouldn't be able to tell what color of panties she has on. But what happens is he says, because it's a beautifully written scene, I can't see through lead. And she's like, that's interesting. And so it's this meet cute date night interview session. Let's learn about the character of Superman and establish the rules for this character, all in this scene. And then, they have this conversation, and then Lois gets up and walks out, and as soon as she walks past the lead planter, he goes, pink, pink. And the thing about that scene is, Superman is not some naive Dudley Do-Right. Superman grew up in Smallville. He went to high school. He's very aware. He could probably hear her heartbeat. And the thing is, Superman is not beyond. He's like, oh, we can get busy, Miss Lane, but that's not appropriate because we're coworkers, even though you don't know it. I mean, there's all kinds of things going on. But what that scene was it was adult in nature. And I had mentioned online how much I love that scene from a screenwriting standpoint, from a storytelling standpoint, and just from, it was like a scene out of a screwball comedy from the 40s or a noir film from the 40s when the two characters meet and there's an attraction between them. It is, and as an 11-year-old, I knew when I was watching that scene that it was a scene that was for adults. Now, I loved it because I love Superman, but I knew even at 11, I'm like, this is an adult scene. And I was kind of like, I wish as an 11-year-old boy, I'm like, I hope one day I can do that to the ladies. I could make a lady like me. I could be that charismatic. I mean, this is an 11-year-old me speaking. I probably still feel that way, but that's what made the scene great. And at that time in my life, I loved movies that were about adults. I never really watched movies about kids. I always liked movies that would show me the adult world that I was going to live in. I was thinking about doing an episode of this show where I talk about the movies from 1979 to 1983. Not necessarily genre films, but the films that really affected me. Movies like All That Jazz, for instance, or The Verdict. And these were, I was in junior high, I was in 6th grade, junior high, and high school. And I saw these films that were all about adults that I dearly loved because I hoped to one day live in the world that these characters lived in. Whether it was Joe Gideon in All That Jazz, whether it was all the characters in Lawrence Kasdan's The Big Chill, whether it was William Hurt's Dr. Jessup in Altered States. I could talk about, and none of these movies they were all very adult, and some were genre, some weren't, but they promised an adult world that I was eagerly desiring to live in. And the thing about Superman, the movie, is it kind of was that way for me. And I saw it as, even though it was Superman, it was a Superman that was concerned with adult matters and adult things. And that was one of the great appeals to me, is I was seeing a glimpse of a world I hoped to one day live in, And even the way the Daily Planet was portrayed and everything that went on, I saw it as the world that not that there was going to be Superman there, but I was very much interested in adult films that were made. I don't mean X-rated movies. I mean movies that were about adults, as opposed to watching movies about teens and all that. I like that, but they weren't the things I was most interested in. I was most interested in depictions of the world that I would wind up and find myself in. Now, I have a couple of articles that I wanted to read about Superman, and that I thought was worth sharing. And one of them, again, comes from Medium. You might say, well, Rob, you always look at Medium for articles. Yeah, because there's like-minded people like myself and like you, imagination connoisseurs, that write for Medium. And whenever I can find something that I think is worth sharing, I share it. And there is an article that is worth sharing that I wanted to read to you. And this was written, it was published 3 days ago in their fanfare section. Medium has different sections. Fanfare is basically things written by fans concerning fandom, various fandoms. And I thought this was a particularly interesting article, and it touched on a few things that I think about a lot. And Superman the movie, a lesson in what superhero movies don't need. And this is by C.W. Sperry. And here's the article. I recently watched the newest Superman movie directed by James Gunn, who was responsible for providing Marvel fans with C-listers joining the A-listers, that is Guardians of the Galaxy, 2014, 2017, and 2023. And the DC Universe's new direction beginning with the Suicide Squad in 2021. Keeping with my principles, I tried to ignore Richard Donner's classic Superman the movie and accept that it's not possible for the increasingly redundant superhero subgenre to be told like that again. Alas, I should have known that the new Superman would fall in line with everything studios demand be necessary for their blockbusters these days, directed by a man responsible for popularizing many of these tropes in the MCU. Needless to say, I wasn't a fan. With that in mind, I returned to the movie that started it all in 1978 and made people believe that a man could fly. Watching Superman, again, is a unique experience that It seems to call out to filmmakers today, setting a template for the genre, yes, but also teaching them what doesn't need to be in superhero movies. You may be wondering what I mean by that. Good question, readers. Take this, for example. In stark contrast to the newest entry, we must wait nearly an entire hour before seeing Christopher Reeve don the iconic blue and red suit and flying across the screen. What occupies the story before that is, well, a fleshed-out story. Thanks to the writing talent of Mario Puzo, his first work following The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2, and rewrites by Richard Donner, Robert Benton, and David and Leslie Newman, this film concerned itself first and foremost with the mythos of its main character, Kal-El's origin as the last surviving member of the planet Krypton, Clark Kent's upbringing with loving parents in Kansas, almost like Dorothy Gale, and discovering everything that makes him super and human. Side note, when I say human, notice how I'm not talking about forced one-liners to keep things light and quippy. Donner's film is surprisingly heavy on drama for the first 47 minutes or so. Everyone remembers the distinctive design of Krypton with its crystal-like appearance, which beautifully encapsulates the purity of the Kryptonian race. Despite this quality, stubbornness prevails, leading to the destruction of the planet. Their leader is Jor-El, who speaks with soft eloquence despite having extraordinary power. Brando, quite infamously, was a diva. That's a nice way of saying pain in the ass. He demanded a fortune and top billing for only 12 days of shooting, despite his limited screen time. Havoc he would similarly cause 2 months later when filming Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now. That said, when he was on, Brando proved why his absurd demands were worth it. Not many actors could convey the weight and gravitas of Superman's heart and soul like he does. Christopher Reeve said Brando phoned it in. But when you're as great as Brando was, it somehow still works. Brando's calming voice adds a certain poetry as he says goodbye to his only son, and subsequently during the film's most hypnotizing scene, appears as a hologram and teaches Clark who he truly is and the responsibility of guiding humanity. They can be a great people, Kal-El. They wish to be. They only lack the light to show the way. For this reason above all, their capacity for good, I have sent them you, my only son, he says. This training scene, if you will, feels like a spiritual journey to cap off Clark's long road towards self-discovery. John Williams' soothing music combined with cosmic imagery lends the scene emotional depth and a meditative quality, providing more introspection within a few minutes than the glorified kaleidoscopic visuals of Doctor Strange, either in 2016 or 2022. The genius here is the simplicity of everything. Another stroke of brilliance in the film's simplicity is earlier when Jonathan Kent, Glenn Ford, like Clark's alien father, guides his son toward his true purpose before his untimely death. There are no ethical dilemmas, confusing morality, or God forbid suggestions to maybe let kids drown on a school bus. From father to son, it's a simple word of advice, the answer for which he admittedly doesn't have. Ford's performance, brief as it is wonderful. Notice his quivering lip and the grasping of his arm once he realizes his heart is failing. Ford researched how a heart attack unfolds to realistically portray it for film, even improvising the sudden arm pain. All those things I can do, all those powers, and I couldn't even save him, Clark says, with one arm around his stepmom and standing over Jonathan's grave. Everything that makes Superman powerful and vulnerable is present in that one line. Superman, as a character, has often been criticized for being one-dimensional. However, the best stories know how to make him an ideal above all else. Superman is a concept that represents the ultimate symbol of hope and goodness in the world. With no other movie has there been a more sophisticated portrait of where that goodness comes from than with this movie. Then, of course, he becomes Superman, and the bulk of the movie now becomes the standard superhero fare we've come to expect. A not-bald Gene Hackman plays Lex Luthor. Hackman, may he rest in peace, is a legend in American cinema, but his portrayal as Luthor is wasted potential, being more of an arrogant comedian rather than a cold-blooded genius. This material isn't nearly compelling to me as the origin story, but it still comes with its merits. For one thing, this is where we get our first look at the greatest Superman of all time, Christopher Reeve. One of the age-old tropes people make fun of is how nobody can see that Clark is Superman. Considering he's 6'4", as muscular as Arnold Schwarzenegger, and all he wears are glasses. Yes, I know of the theories that the glasses alter his appearance to others, but that's never said in the movies. Well, until James Gunn's movie. Reeve makes it work because he believably plays a goofball fish out of water, a farm boy adapting to the big city. Much of his dialogue, delivered in that brilliant pitch change in his voice, consists of old-fashioned dialect like swell, which Lois Lane quickly corrects him about. There are very few people in the world who feel comfortable saying that, Lois tells him right before he awkwardly gets stuck in a revolving door. What makes their chemistry work is how he's out of place, and she shows him how to be a city boy. These images of Superman are iconic, and everyone remembers them. Lifting the helicopter, using his body to support a train with broken tracks, and how can we forget the romantic flying scene with Lois over the city? That is, of course, before Lois begins reading the corny poem in a voiceover. These effects, though certainly outdated, have a certain charm. They're highly commendable given the technical limitations of the time. Like The Wizard of Oz from 1939, part of the magic is seeing as clear as day how obvious the effects are, probably because we can sense the effort and craft that went into making these ridiculous feats visible on screen. The one moment that cannot be forgiven, however, is the defiance of any logic or reason when Superman spins the Earth backward to reverse time and stop Lois from dying. Of course, there is zero science to this. That just goes without saying. The massive blow it represents is cheapening the impact of what was an emotionally devastating scene. Superman lost the woman he loves, and Reeves' acting is dramatic to perfection. So much for that, I guess. Now, I'm going to stop for a minute. I would like to say something about this. And when I was 11 years old, watching Superman at the John Dan Cinema for the very first time, it never occurred to me to think that Superman actually was spinning the world backwards. I just thought Superman was traveling through time, and this was the cool way that they were showing us what he was actually doing. And it was his speed. He wasn't really affecting the Earth. The only person that was moving or changing things was Superman himself. And the idea of the world spinning backwards or him, that was only because it was a cool visual. This idea that everybody thinks that the Earth was actually spun back on its axis and all that, and that's how time and everybody went backwards like a tape. Even when I was a kid, I'm like, that's not... When people would say that's what they thought happened, I'm like, no, man, he was just traveling through time. The only person that was... The only thing that was going backwards was Superman himself. Of course, that's what I've thought. I guess, maybe I'm in a minority here. But I'm just saying, I never thought the world was spinning backwards. That's just how they chose to they coolly represent that. And by the way, for those of you in the know, that wasn't supposed to happen in Superman 1. That was supposed to happen in Superman 2. But after Richard Donner it was changed. Anyway. So, fortunately, the rest of the film is so good that even this moment, quite possibly the dumbest scene in all of Superman movie history, which says a lot. Again, I don't see the world spinning backwards. I see Superman traveling through time, and it's fucking cool. Doesn't ruin the overall experience. Ironically, Superman the movie was made to be big, hence why priority was given to A-list heavy hitters like Brando and Hackman. However, the end result is one of those experiences that's built more on emotions than anything else. The brilliance is how simple those emotions are that pave the way for bigger concepts that define superhero lore. No comic book movie before or since has better illustrated the responsibility a hero has to the world with the power they possess, but also how limiting that power can be when there are things beyond their control. The tagline read, "You will believe a man can fly," but hindsight says, superheroes today aren't soaring like they used to. Maybe it's time to go back to that blueprint. Now, I just thought that was a pretty good little article about Superman the movie. I happen to agree with it mostly. I mean, what's really interesting about Superman the movie, and I'm going to say a lot of this is John Williams' score. I used to argue with my friends because, remember, you had the double album Superman soundtrack come out only a year after the double album Star Wars soundtrack came out, and we would argue which soundtrack was better. And there are really interesting pieces of music like the March of the Villains, which predated the Imperial March, but there's great, incredible music in that Superman soundtrack. And those two soundtracks, if I were to look back on my life, and if I had like a Spotify playlist and I could clock how long or how many times I'd played each one of those records, it wouldn't surprise me to know that the two records I've played the most in my life were that original Star Wars soundtrack and the Superman soundtrack. And maybe Close Encounters, but that was only a single record, so it didn't get as much interest from me as Star Wars and Superman. But can you imagine? Star Wars comes out with a John Williams score. About 6 months later, Close Encounters of the Third Kind comes out with an unbelievable score. And then 6 months after that, Superman the movie comes out. And that was 78. You know what else came out in 1978? Jaws 2, with the soundtrack by who? Say it with me now. That's right, John Williams. And there's pieces of music on that Jaws 2 soundtrack. And if memory serves, in 1978, John Williams might have scored Brian De Palma's The Fury. Was that 78? The Fury 78? I think it was. I mean, Jesus Cristo, this man is incredible. We all know that. But those were the days. Those were the heady days. And you were getting different kinds of scores. The Fury's a horror score. This predated, and by the way, the next year he gave us the Dracula score. Not John Williams. You just can't keep a good man down. But seriously, I mean, the Superman the movie, it was even though it had its goofy parts, it was a movie that was made for adults that appealed to children. And again, it was, and Superman 2, at the time we didn't think much of it. It was just as good as Superman 1. We didn't understand how Richard Lester replaced Richard Donner and then it was a little bit more campy. But I mean, look at the portrayal of Zod, Ursa, and Non from the beginning of Superman the movie to how they are in Superman 2. It gets a little goofier because I was when I saw Superman the movie, I was terrified by the three villains from Krypton. Well, at least Terrence Stamp as Zod, because he was so scary in the way he just talked and the way they looked. Jack O'Halloran and Sarah Douglas, man, unbelievable. I dare say that I liked Zod in Zack Snyder's Man of Steel. I like Zod. He was great. Michael Shannon was great as Zod. But there was something about Terrence Stamp in Superman the movie. As small as his role is, he lingers. He lingers in my mind because the way he spoke. He didn't yell. I will blame you. And then when he gets mad, you will bow down before me, Jor-El. Both you and then one day your heirs. I mean, I'm like, oh shit, man, he's going to go after his family, like his descendants? That doesn't seem fair. But that was great stuff. Now, here's another article I wanted to read that was in the Hollywood Reporter on July 18th, and these kind of go together. And this one was interesting. It was a guest editorial. And when did Superman become so controversial? I couldn't, and it's by Vasilis K. Pozios? I'm sure I fucked that up, but hey, Vasilis, I'm stealing your article. Thanks for letting me read it. The Man of Steel became a political lightning rod this summer with the release of the new movie, but world's most wholesome hero has actually been under attack since 1954, when Dr. Frederick Werdum published the anti-comics treatise Seduction of the Innocent. Superman, the most humane superhero of them all, a big blue Boy Scout who believes in truth and justice, and the American way, is suddenly the most... By the way, that never even appeared in comics, just so you know. It first came up on a radio show, the Superman radio show. It came out later in comics, but it was first introduced in a radio show. Is suddenly the most controversial character in pop culture. From debates about the last son of Krypton's immigration status to assertions that director James Gunn intended a Superman subplot to be an allegory of Israel's war in Gaza, Social media is abuzz about Superman. Played by David Cornsweet in the new movie. Even the White House, via its official X account, couldn't resist getting in on the action, posting an AI-generated image of President Trump as the Man of Steel. By the way, Baravia first appeared in the second issue of the Superman comic, just so you know. But this isn't the first time pundits have tugged on Superman's cape, attempting to drag him and comic books into a culture war. Before heavy metal was said to incite Satanism, by the way, rest in peace, our great Dark Lord, the man who said, well, who sang Iron Man. We've lost one of the greats, and it was great that just weeks ago he was able to do his final concert. Anyway, before heavy metal was said to incite Satanism, before a rise in crime was pinned on hip-hop music, and before video games were blamed for mass shootings, it was comic books that fired the first shot of the pop culture wars. The most popular comics of the late 1940s and the early 1950s didn't feature Superman, Batman, or Wonder Woman. Instead, they were crime and horror comics from upstart independent publishers like EC Comics. These cutting-edge comics owed their success to shock value, featuring gory horror, gross-out humor, and raw, ripped-from-the-headlines true crime-inspired stories that drew the ire of parents, pastors, and politicians alike. Comic books were rock and roll years before Elvis cut his first record. Every culture war has its Tipper Gore, and the comic book moral panic was no different. Enter Dr. Frederick Werdum, the psychiatrist and media personality who in 1954, a year in which the comic book industry sold a staggering 1.2 billion issues, published his anti-comics treatise, Seduction of the Innocent. In it, Werdum railed against comics as a cause of juvenile delinquency, dyslexia, and other childhood behavioral problems that kept anxious parents up at night. In addition to concerns about imitative violence and instructive depictions on how to commit crimes, Werdum was highly critical of what he perceived to be predatory advertising practices of comic book publishers, especially when it came to selling air-powered pistols, pocket knives, and bullwhips to kids. His solution? Prohibit the sale of crime and horror comics to children. Even Superman wasn't invulnerable to Werdum's criticism. As an anti-fascist social psychiatrist, Werdum decried Superman as a genetically superior savior, though through his might makes right methods promoted fascist ideals. He equated the hero's authoritarian power and vigilante justice with an uncritical glorification of force, and saw Superman and other superheroes as fostering a sense of learned helplessness in children, and contributing to juvenile delinquency by encouraging fantasies of omnipotence and dominance. Like Nazis, who misappropriated Nietzsche's Übermensch, Werdum deeply misunderstood Superman as fascist. He even went as far as to compare Superman's S shield to the Nazi SS logo. Werdum's superficial assessment failed to account not only for Superman's World War II-era Nazi-smashing adventures, but the character's earliest depictions as an essentially socialist folk hero. Werdum's anti-comics crusade whipped America into a frenzy, culminating in congressional hearings that pressured the industry into adopting the Comics Code Authority, a sort of Hays Code for comics, codifying superhero do's and don'ts, like good triumphing over evil. While Werdum wasn't an advocate of the code, he was ultimately responsible for it and the resulting overnight overhaul of the comic book industry. Crime and horror publishers were buried. New life was breathed into the concept of superheroes, resurrecting DC Comics and giving birth to the Marvel Age of Comics, forever changing the landscape of American pop culture. Indeed, the now discarded Comics Code was instrumental in crystallizing our perception of Superman, as epitomized by Christopher Reeve's paragon of virtue seen in Richard Donner's 1978 classic Superman the Movie, and standardizing his morality across all superheroes. This back-to-basics take on the superhero is essential to Cornsweet's portrayal of Superman, who Gunn has said embodies kindness in a world that thinks of kindness as old-fashioned. To die-hard comic book geeks, Werdum remains Lex Luthor, the ultimate archenemy, and seduction of the innocent is comic book kryptonite. Despite his extensive progressive bona fides, Werdum's hatred of the comics medium has forever branded him a right-wing zealot in the minds of comic fans. It's easy to laugh off Werdum's criticisms of comic books, especially Superman, as the rantings of an old man shaking his fist at a cloud, but his warnings could still prove prophetic. As both the right and the left co-opt popular IP like The Punisher and Super Mario Bros. Luigi to advance political agendas, actually it's because the dude's name was Luigi, but okay, and as some comic fans unironically idealize fascist Superman parodies like The Boys, Homelander, and Invincible's Omni-Man, it's not impossible to imagine Superman himself being hijacked by those with ill intentions, especially once the character enters into the public domain in 2034. In an era saturated with protagonists driven by grievance, narcissistic injury, and the authoritarian impulse that only they can restore order, it's reassuring to know Superman's humble decency is resonating with moviegoers. After all, wouldn't it be good to prove Werdum wrong? Vasilis K. Pozios, MD, is a forensic psychiatrist with a long-standing interest in the intersection of mental health, pop culture, and violence. His work has appeared in the New York Times, Wired, The Hollywood Reporter, and The Daily Beast, where he's explored how cultural narratives both reflect and shape societal values. I thought that was a little bit that was worth reading to go along with the previous article. It's been interesting to me to watch. I mean, obviously the most obvious thing in fandom is the idea of Zack Snyder's 3 Superman films, Man of Steel trilogy, the Justice League trilogy, whatever you want to call it. And it is, make no mistake, a trilogy. And I think one of the great fandom triumphs of all time, the first being the 3rd season of Star Trek, the original series, that was saved by a letter-writing campaign. Star Trek was saved, but yeah, we didn't get exactly what we wanted in Star Trek's 3rd season. But the fan reaction to the Snyder Cut was an amazing thing. And I'm a huge fan of the Snyder Cut, all 4 hours of it. I mean, I think it's wonderful. It's a great culmination. Now, I thought that was fandom won, but this idea that, you know, one of the things about growing up and becoming mature is you got to know when to get up from the table and walk away, and know when to run. When you have a win, you don't want to buy it back, and I feel that there is not a more insufferable bunch of fans than call them the Snyder Bros. That's what people are saying, because there is no group of fandom that is currently more abusive to other fans, especially over this new Superman movie, than that fandom is, which to me is in itself fascinating. I mean, I'm not going to come right out and say, fuck you, dudes. I don't really do that, but it's very interesting to see, like, as I've said many times on this show, when I was growing up, I would watch anything, any science fiction, fantasy, or horror movie that came out. If something had a whiff of anything to do with science fiction, fantasy, and horror, I would watch it. I'd watch the hell out of it, even if it sucked. And there was a lot of things that we got that sucked. I was with my friend Bill Hunt today, and I was talking to Mike Bodden, my business partner, today, and, you know, I'm like, I used to get excited for Manimal and Automan. And, you know, or actually, you know, the Shazam Isis Hour, or Arc 2, or Far Out Space Nuts. I mean, man, Saturday morning, Thundar the Barbarian, I would watch it. It didn't matter. And, you know, if you told me that anybody, the coming of a new Superman movie would be some kind of divisive thing for fandom, I'm like, that never would have occurred to me. And, you know, I think that there's a lot of people that I understand don't like James Gunn's approach to the character. But now people are actively rooting for it to fail at the box office. Which, I mean, if you want more comic book movies, you want comic book movies to succeed. Now, right now, it's doing pretty well. Like I said, James Gunn's Superman, as of today, the box office results for Tuesday haven't been reported yet, but it made $6.5 million on a Monday. It made, I think $11 million last Monday. So that's still midweek hold on a Monday, pretty damn good. Tomorrow, Taco Tuesdays at the movie theaters, Tuesdays and Wednesdays. I'm sure those numbers will go up. Fantastic Four will join the fray on Thursday. And, I think both movies are going to be able to do quite well in the marketplace together. It's interesting that both are sort of retro throwbacks that take place in their own universes. I mean, one thing about Fantastic Four, it is not connected to the greater Marvel universe, at least not yet. Yes, even with the post-credit scenes, it is not. And I love that about the movie. It stands on its own. It doesn't rely on any other kind of MCU mythology, and it's providing something new and self-contained, which I think was a very smart way to go. And set in the past, set in a different universe, in that universe's past. And I think both movies will have I think, from what I understand, having not seen Fantastic Four, a streak of kindness in both films, which I think, what a wonderful thing now, especially with how divided our country seems to be, which I also don't understand, because when you get right down to it, I think most of this country believes in the founding principles of this nation, which, while we've been imperfect throughout our lives, our Constitution is a singular document. And yes, I know the Oneida Nation was the indigenous people of the Oneida Nation contributed greatly to our Constitution, as was recognized by Congress back in 1988. And I know that because I worked with a woman named Baba Cooper to make a PSA, an award-winning PSA, about that very thing that Robbie Robertson from the band wrote the music for. And that was a wonderful, wonderful time. I really like working on that project. Actually, it wasn't 88. It was the Congress approved it in 88, but the PSA came out in the early 90s. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But it's just odd to me to see fandom, tearing at each other's throats over a Superman movie. I mean, we've got a big budget Superman movie with the beginning of a new. I mean, it made me more excited than ever for the Supergirl adaptation, which is adapting Tom King's Woman of Tomorrow story, which is great. And if you read it, I would recommend reading it. It's a great story, but you'll be even more excited for Supergirl. And I think it's great. Who knows where? I can't wait to see a Lanterns TV series. I'm very excited, and I hope that the MCU, I want Fantastic Four to be great. I've heard the Wonder Man series is great, which comes out at the end of the year. I'm very excited for Terry Metalis' Vision series. And of course, I'm not going to lie, I love the Avengers movies. We're 4 for 4 on those. And Age of Ultron only gets better year after year. I can't wait. I'm hoping that Doomsday and Secret Wars are gonna be fantastic. I mean, I really hope they are, because Infinity War and Endgame are two of the greatest fantasy films ever made, much less superhero movies. But so anyway, yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting thing. I mean, and I think the reaction to the Superman movie, while it's not divisive, some people really like it and some people don't. It's not their cup of tea. And I find it really interesting to hear people's differing thoughts on the character of Superman and what people think about superheroes. I think it's both a generational thing, it's a gender thing, it's a religious thing, it's a political thing. But either way, it's fascinating. It's fascinating to see people actually having these conversations about superheroes, which is pretty great. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I really have been enjoying the discourse, even on this channel. The comments people have been leaving on the shows, and it's been terrific. And by the way, I do have some letters I'm going to read. Before I move further, though, let me jump in and see where you guys are at. If people are, by the way, if you want to read those two articles, they're always in the description of the show, along with the tip link. If you don't want to leave a super chat or something, you can also, another way to do it is a tip, and that link is in there too, if you choose to do that. Let's see, I'm going to go down and see where we're at here and read your comments. Let's see where we go. Let's start with Joe Panora. Joe Panora says, my issue was reporters claiming the right hates this movie, it's about immigration, which wasn't true. Maybe they were just setting up an excuse in case it flopped. I've seen it twice. I really liked it. Yeah, I find that the whole immigration thing, it's such a weird... I mean, I know Superman is not an immigrant. He's more of a refugee. And he's a baby. He didn't make the decision to immigrate anywhere. he was sent here beyond it was beyond his control. But I would call him, I mean, I guess you could say he was an immigrant, but I've always thought that an immigrant chose to immigrate, whereas he's a refugee from a dead planet. So I don't know if that's the right terminology to use, but so there you go. Darth Plato says the best sports movies in no order are Rudy, 8 Men Out, Rocky, Ben-Hur, Gladiator. Those last two may not be sports movies now, but they were a sport. Could add Spartacus to that. Well, I can't argue with our resident historian with that. Rocky's a great sports movie, and Rudy's great and 8 Men Out, but those aren't my favorites. I put my favorites in the top of the chat, which you can see. Mario Lopez coming to us from Portugal. Say hi to your mom for me, Mario. James Gunn's DC is a bad copy of Marvel movies. Oh, Mario. We've only got one movie so far, and I think it's actually going to be different. Superman is way more fantastical and less grounded than all the Marvel movies are, even Guardians and Thor. Tony Reyes has been a member of the channel for 40 months. DBZ Now says, what are your thoughts on Dwayne Johnson? It seems as though his reputation isn't exactly stellar right now. Did he fly too close to the sun with DC and WB? Look, I think Dwayne Johnson is a great showman. And, he's got a great movie coming out that Benny Safdie directed about the wrestler. I forget the name of it right now, but it's going to premiere in Venice. And he looks like it's great in that. Look, I think that obviously when you wield Hollywood power, you want to continue to wield Hollywood power. And I think that The Rock knows what he's doing. He might have gotten too close to the sun. He might have thought that, look, DC's movies were not performing well. If Black Adam made $1 billion, it would be a different story, but it didn't. And you know what? I kind of like Black Adam. I like the depiction of the Justice Society. It's not great, but I enjoy it. I enjoy the film, and he certainly put his all into it. Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, look, I don't know if his reputation's been, somebody said he came to the set late. I mean, it's not like, it sounded to me like typical diva behavior that shouldn't be tolerated, but it's not like, I don't think it's a cancelable offense. And I think, look, everybody's one great project away from wiping the slate clean. So, I'd like to see him succeed. Jen McMahon says, I forgot Supertramp was in the first Superman the movie. It was right before the earthquake scene at the gas station. You mean a song, source cue from Supertramp? Yes, but I don't remember what it was. Whenever I hear Supertramp, one of my favorite uses of a Supertramp song in a movie was in Little Darlings, when they play the song School. School's one of my favorite Supertramp songs. But I don't know which song it is. I'm not sure. Maybe you know. Deez Webbo says, I always thought it was scary when Ursa killed the boy with that police light in Superman 2 when he tried to run away. Yeah, they were pretty brutal. Nick Allanen? Allanen? I believe a new Superman film should be told from the perspective of an ordinary citizen. The mystery of who he is should be kept, though difficult, amazing from a distance. And bring on Project Hail Mary. That's a good idea, but one of the great depictions of that was in Alex Ross's sort of introduction to the comic book world in Marvel's series. The Marvel series is still one of my favorite comic book series of all time, not just because of Alex Ross's art, but we got to see what superheroes would look like from a street level perspective, the human perspective. I thought it was really a terrific comic series. And yes, Project Hail Mary, I certainly can't wait for it. There's going to be a big presentation in Hall H. Maybe they'll show what they showed at CinemaCon, which I think they should have, because I think the trailer, while the trailer was good, it did the movie no favors. It made it look like a goofy, I mean, I don't want them to show any more of Rocky than they did, but it made it look a little too goofy when it's really not. What they showed us was really affecting and very apocalyptic. Coach Sipping Jamba Juice says, I think John is wrong about nobody being interested in the attack of the 50-foot woman. All macro all macrophiles will be anxiously waiting for that to come out. Yeah, I just don't think John had any knowledge or experience of the old, the 50s movies. I don't think is John's jam. I don't think he's seen a lot of the giant insect movies. I don't think he's ever seen them. I don't think he's ever seen like Children of the Damned or Village of the Giants or any of that stuff. And that's why it just seems silly to him. But I understand. I'm looking forward to it. I think Margot Robbie doing Attack of the 50-Foot Woman could be great. I thought, Daryl Hannah was good in the 1993 version. So I think there will be people. Look, if it's good, you can make people interested in anything. It just has to be well written, and it has to be well done. B Things says, this year's Superman 25, has made my world a better place since I saw it last Tuesday. B Things goes on to say, meanwhile, my eye surgery last month was more fun than Thursday's Strange New Worlds episodes. Yeah, that second episode with Dr. Roger Corby. I mean, if people want to really understand my real problem with modern Star Trek, that second episode of Strange New Worlds, what is it called, Wedding Bell Blues? What kind of show are you writing? First of all, that episode was a prequel to What Are Little Girls Made Of from the first season, the Squire of Gothos, and it maintains that a Gene Roddenberry created Q himself, is Trelane's father. Now, as I've said before, Peter David covered this ground in his great Star Trek novel Q Squared, 3.5 decades ago, whenever that book came out. Probably it came out in the early 90s, I think. I mean, what? You're going to make a sequel? You're going to have 3 different Star Trek episodes referenced in your one episode? First of all, you shouldn't be doing that at all. You should be giving us a show about brand new characters with brand new situations that are unique to your show. I mean, the first episode of this season was all about the Gorn, which is a ripoff from Arena. Most of the Strange New Worlds episodes, and by the way, they don't jibe. If you were to watch an episode, if you were to watch What Are Little Girls Made Of, and you listen to the conversation, go look at Major Grin's video. What, has everybody forgotten everything? Spock and Roger Corby and Christine. And what's with Scotty being younger than Kirk? I mean, clearly they're telling the audience that this isn't original Star Trek. Well, I know that because it's horrible, and the writing is terrible. Look, I know people like it, and I don't begrudge you if you like it. It's fine. There's a lot of things that aren't good for me that I love too. But, I mean, that show, to me, it's abysmal. I can't watch it. I can't watch it because I'm like, give me something new. The great thing about Star Trek The Next Generation is very different from the original series. Deep Space Nine was very different than... And again, Next Generation and Deep Space Nine give us a whole... Deep Space Nine especially gives us a whole pantheon of brand new characters and really fascinating situations. And when the show got cranked up in seasons 2 and then 3 and especially 4, 5, 6, and 7... It was spectacular television. The writers who work on Strange New World don't have a tenth of the talent that the writing staff of Deep Space Nine has. And it's depressing. Let's see. Black Rocks says, Rob, what do you think of Star Trek Academy? Well, the video game or the upcoming Starfleet Academy series? I haven't really played. If you're talking about the video game, I really haven't played it that much. And I have no faith in a Starfleet Academy series. So, yeah. And I don't know. The Dead Man says, Godspeed, the Prince of Darkness. Yeah, Ozzy Osbourne. It's so great. I did mention, I can't stop. Somebody made a video of the end of Endgame where Tony Stark snaps his fingers and it goes, when he snaps his fingers, I am Iron Man. You hear the it's so cool. I don't know why they didn't do that in the movie. But yeah, and he knew the way he went out, he couldn't walk, but that sitting in that Devil's Throne, that whole last concert. I've only seen clips from it, but what a way to go, man. Ozzy Osbourne. I mean, what was he like? Black Sabbath was around since like 1970. I mean, incredible. He was incredible, and he knew he was going to go out, and he had that last concert. That's how I want to be remembered. DBZ Now says, thoughts on Spider-Boy being reprinted. With this and the Deadpool Batman comic, it seems both companies are humoring collabs more. Yeah, I mean, you know, it was interesting. They've always done, obviously from my childhood, the biggest one was the Superman Spider-Man comic, but the one I liked the best was the X-Men Teen Titans with Darkseid and Dark Phoenix. That comic was dope. And then, of course, you know, they had other crossovers, and then what was the universe where they were mashed together. But yeah, look, I mean, I think it'd be cool if they did a Justice League Avengers movie. The comic was great, the George Perez comic. But yeah, I mean, collabs, maybe. I don't know if they could get the rights together, but if Sony and Disney can do Spider-Man together, why can't Warner Brothers, why can't James Gunn? If anybody could do it, James Gunn and Kevin Feige could do it. Basically, Deadpool and Wolverine's kind of a lark. You could totally do a collaboration, a DC Marvel collaboration movie. Trollmageddon says, please tell John 4K Blu-rays are superior to streaming with video quality and sound, much, much more superior, and he should help bring back physical media to Best Buy. Well, that's never going to happen, but look, you know me. Every week, I'm here with Dieter Bastian, fighting the good fight for physical media. I mean, you should see how much physical media is actually in this room, in the Robservatory. There's got to be 4,000 discs here. Wait till you see the video I made of my friend Bill Hunt's collection today. Sci-Fi Extremist asks, any interest in a reality with an original comics code? The Comics Code Authority? Not really. I don't know really what that would do. I think that would be very difficult to pull off, you know, realistically, or where people would like it. Thomas Logan says Superman 25 will end up making less than Superman Returns in 2006 when adjusted for inflation. Returns made $630 million, a spectacular failure for Gunn. It's been out 11 days. The movie will be in theaters for at least 45. It's been out 11 days. It's not a spectacular failure. And, you know, adjusting for inflation really isn't fair because there's lots of other societal things to consider. There was a lot more people going to the movies then. You can't sit there and say, oh, it's adjusted for inflation. Yeah, but what were movie-going trends in 2006 as compared to now? There's a lot less people going to the movies. The youth of America doesn't go to the movies anymore. Movies are not the primary interest of people 25 and under the way they used to be. So, I mean, it's all, you can't, there's total societal changes, and it's not a spectacular failure. A spectacular failure would have been if it didn't make $200 million. If it had failed like, say, the Marvels failed. No, Superman's going to be just fine. It's going to be just fine. And I have $1,000 that says it's going to make more than Man of Steel, not adjusted for inflation. So, and why do you want to gloat about a failure for James Gunn? What did he ever do to you? He made Slither. He made Super. He made 4 superhero movies that are great. The Guardians of the Galaxy movies and the Suicide Squad. His Peacemaker series was a hoot. His novel, The Toy Collector, I really love. I loved his Dawn of the Dead against all my better judgment. I mean, you know, the guy's out there making movies and people are happy watching them. I mean, that's all anybody can ask for. And I think Superman is going to be great, and I think The Lanterns is going to be great too. So it's not just Superman you have to look at. You got to look at this whole universe that's already in progress. And, you know, the first, if it makes about $650 million, which I think it very well could make that, that's a success. For a brand new, coming off of what DC's movies had been making, that's a success. In this day and age, very much so. So, you know, you can say it isn't just, first of all, there's a lot of things that go into the making of movies. For instance, when I worked on Superman Returns, there's a part of Warner Brothers called Global Brand Management. And if you notice, James Gunn's Superman has tie-ins with everything from high-end knife companies to Dairy Queen. Those companies pay the studio, and those are very lucrative licensing agreements. And I would imagine, I haven't seen any numbers on this, but the Superman, the Global Brand Management, the Global Partners, I worked for those people. I would make videos. I made Superman videos for KFC, for Target, Pepsi. I did all kinds of videos to entice them to come become partners with Superman Returns. And I think I can even... I wonder if I would get in trouble if I showed it. I'll see if I can find it as I'm live. I will show you something that not a lot of people have seen, but I'd have to look at it. I have to find it. Seth Gagne? Is it Gagne or Gagne? No, I'm still good. And he upgraded his membership to becoming a PGS hero. Thank you for that. B Thing says, I got a 1986 edition of the Globe Illustrated Shakespeare today. The book in Picard's ready room. That's cool. That's really cool. What a cool thing to have. DBZ now says, I hope Zaslav does not repeat the failings of their predecessor and do not repeat the Batgirl situation with Supergirl. Oh, they won't. That would be disastrous. Hopefully he also extends Gunn's contract next year. Yeah, well, let's hope so. I mean, we'll see. We shall see what happens there. But I'm sure he will, because they're going to be in process, and they've got other movies that they're working on. So we shall see. Joshua Gonzalez asks, what's your favorite Ozzy song? So you're talking about his solo career. I don't know as much about Ozzy's solo career as I probably should. I mean, and to tell you the truth, to be honest, it's hard for me if I hear songs to know whether they're Black Sabbath or Ozzy Osbourne solo tunes. Because I just want to find this out right now. So, for instance, Crazy Train. That's in my mind. I have to see this. That's his first solo single, I believe, right? Isn't that his first solo single? Blizzard of Oz? Okay. Yeah, September 1980. That was a big deal. 1980 was a big year for me. And in September of 1980, I remember that because I was going into the 8th grade, and Blizzard of Oz, everybody was listening to that record. So I just have a special place in my heart for Crazy Train. So you ask, in terms of my favorite Ozzy song, I'd have to go with that, and that whole album, only because it came out right when I went back to school when I was in the 8th grade, and everybody was listening to that record, passing it around, and yeah. Thomas Pope asks, did Superman ever make you feel like a kid again? Not really. Because I'd never seen a Superman kind of like this. I mean, it reminded me of when I was reading comics in high school, because the humorous Justice League comic came out it came out when I was in college, but it made me feel like that. It didn't make me feel like a kid. What makes me feel like a kid is animated. The Super Friends, I have all the animated, the Super Friends, the first hour-long Super Friends, and then the Super Friends that had Zan and Jaina, the Wonder Twins. They came after Wendy and Marvin, and that's when the Legion of Doom came in and all that. So those voice actors that were in a lot of different animated films, those things more than anything. The Super Friends cartoon is the thing that throws me back to childhood, because there's been different iterations, like the Batman animated series and the Superman animated series came out after I'd moved to California. So they don't remind me of my childhood. The Batman and Superman animated series reminds me. The Max Fleischer Superman cartoons remind me of my childhood, but not the movies. Coach Sipping Jamba Juice says, there was a rumor early on that Sydney Sweeney is the next Bond girl. I don't believe the rumor to be true at all, but what are your thoughts? Okay, to me, a Bond girl should be... The American Bond girls are not the best. Although Carrie Lowell in License to Kill is pretty great. But I prefer Bond girls to have a European or international, a European or an Asian flavor. Just because I'm an American, I guess. I think Bond girls should have an accent. They should speak English with an accent, if that means anything at all. DBZ now says, With how much Warner Brothers has been leading this year at the box office, they should be more than happy, even if Superman does not reach the greatest of heights. Well, to be honest, I think that Superman, actually what they were probably expecting was somewhere between 600 and 800 million. I think that's what they were expecting because, $1 billion is too much. I mean, they expected Man of Steel to make $1 billion. They expected Batman v Superman to make $1 million because at the time, Marvel was riding high on the success of their Avengers movies, but they had spent more time building them up. So, and that's one of the problems that I think Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. I think the greatest mistake that DC made of that era, the people that were shepherding DC, is not to make Ben Affleck's Batman movie. I've never been able to get my hands on that script, but I've always tried it. And the Batman versus Deathstroke, the Terminator, that movie would have been, and with Ben Affleck directing it and playing Batman, that movie could have been dope. That was the thing that I most wanted to see out of that didn't happen, and I really wish it would. It still could. Even if Ben Affleck didn't play Batman, they could introduce a new Batman and still do that script. Because that would be a really interesting way into the Teen Titans as well. Because Deathstroke the Terminator is one of my favorite. I mean, in terms of the Teen Titans are one of my favorite comics. The Marv Wolfman, George Perez Titans, starting in 1980. One of my favorite comic book runs ever. Until it got derailed to introduce the Teen Titans in the middle of the Titans Hunt storyline, which was really good. I love that. The wildebeests and all that. I love the Teen Titans. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, Warner Brothers is doing quite well. They've got Weapons coming out next. Month. And they've got some other stuff coming. F1 is still in theaters. It's made $500 million. I mean, Warner Brothers is kicking ass, taking names. I mean, Superman will probably cross. It wouldn't surprise me if Superman crosses. It's at 416 million now. It wouldn't surprise me to be close to 500 million by the end of the weekend. If it does well midweek, it wouldn't surprise me if it passes $500 million, which would be great. And it'll play through August, so we'll see what it does. Laserbeam Hawkins says, "Hail Rob and the Post-Geek Singularity. I enjoyed Superman. Came out of the movie in a great mood. It was a fun popcorn flick. Which I hadn't had since Godzilla -1. Man, Godzilla -1 is terrific." Thomas Logan says Aquaman made $1 billion. It did. I loved Aquaman. And Wonder Woman 17 made $800 million. Yeah, it did. I mean, those movies are great. I love those movies. I loved Aquaman. I couldn't believe how much I loved Aquaman. Go James Gunn, James Gunn. Go James Wan. And by the way, those movies are Snyderverse movies. So, so's The Flash. So, I mean, if you really think about it, Zack Snyder casts Aquaman, Wonder Woman, and The Flash. So, you got to love those movies. And they did all three of those movies. I don't understand why people don't love The Flash. I love The Flash. I think The Flash is great. I don't care what anybody says. Yeah, those movies did very, very, very well. Nobody expected Aquaman to make $1 billion. And James Wan came off of his $1.5 billion Fast and the Furious, or Furious 7. That was amazing. DBZ Now says, that reminds me that we're supposedly getting a Deathstroke and Bane movie. That could rock. Hire the John Wick crew. It could. I don't know. I think Deathstroke is a Teen Titans character. Deathstroke and Brother Blood are the Joker and Riddler and Trigon. Trigon, Deathstroke, and Brother Blood are, to me, the ultimate Teen Titans villains. And you shouldn't use Deathstroke unless it's Teen Titans related. I don't think. I mean, unless you're gonna have him fight Batman, it's great because Deathstroke, he basically is Bruce Wayne. He's the antithesis. He's the mirror image of Batman. That's why it'd be so interesting to see them go up against each other. B Thing says, why do fans care so much about box office? I think it's easy because you can look at these numbers and argue about which one's better or more successful. But the problem is, again, you have to take into consideration when the movies came out, what was going on at the box office at that time. Were movies like that popular? What was happening at the time those movies were released? There's a lot of factors that go into those films. I mean, I would say that one of the great things about, first of all, Patty Jenkins did not develop Wonder Woman. She came in, the first director left, and so all the Wonder Woman was hired, all the creative was done, and she came in and she delivered a great movie. But Wonder Woman was coming off of Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. She was introduced in grand fashion the same way that Black Panther was introduced in Civil War. So you had a great tee-up for that character of Wonder Woman. And then, you know, I thought it was really well done. I really liked the first Wonder Woman. However, I don't think you can talk about Patty Jenkins' Wonder Woman without talking about Patty Jenkins' Wonder Woman 84, which was a complete debacle. And she had total creative control over that film. And I will never understand the storyline they went with in that movie. That storyline was gobbledygook. And I will never understand, how do you take Wonder Woman and make Wonder Woman 84? Oh, boy, that movie's terrible. But yeah, box office, you can just look at numbers and be like, oh, look, this one made more money than this one. Okay, but why did it? You know? Well, because James Gunn's worse than Zack Snyder. No. Some of my favorite movies underperformed at the box office. Why did Shawshank Redemption fail at the box office? Is it a bad movie? No, it's one of the most beloved movies in the world. But it failed at the box office. So, it's weird. I mean, it's a bizarre thing. Artificially Stupid Intelligence says, do you think the new Evil Dead will follow Sam Raimi's 3 books rule? Evil Dead 1, Evil Dead Remake, and the other Evil Dead Remake? The OG movie showed 3 books. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's going to stay in continuity. Look, you can't... I worked on Army of Darkness. I have a screen credit in Army of Darkness. I worked on an Evil Dead movie, so that's cool. But I would say this. They couldn't even... You know, the original title of Army of Darkness was The Medieval Dead. And they had to change it because the studio was like, oh, the Evil Dead movies aren't successful. Nobody knows what they are. And Evil Dead 2 retells the story of Evil Dead 1 in the first 10 minutes, or first 15 minutes. So, continuity between the Evil Dead movies, you know, I don't know. I still think Evil Dead 1 is the best Evil Dead movie. I love it so much. But I don't know the answer. Sci-Fi Extremist says, roster chosen for the Teen Titans film will likely split fans. Yeah, you know, I was thinking about that. And to me, the roster for me is Teen Titans 1. So it's Raven, Beast Boy, Wonder Girl, Kid Flash, Robin, Donna Troy. Right? Isn't that the classic lineup? And Cyborg. And Cyborg. That to me is the classic Teen Titans lineup. That should be the lineup. Fuck everybody else. I know, there's a lot of water under that bridge. B Thing says, thoughts on Red Sonja finally releasing? I have no interest. I mean, to be honest, you know who's going to make Red Sonja? Bryan Singer. My friend Bryan Singer was going to direct Red Sonja, and Ashley Edward Miller had written a great script, and they were ready to go. And unfortunately, that got derailed, which is a bummer. But what can you do? What can you do? So, yeah, that's not a good thing. So, I don't know. Maybe it'll be good. I thought the trailer looked really lackluster. I thought it looked really not for me. Secular Monk says, you praised Project Hail Mary. I picked the book up and started reading it in my spare time. Grace is about to meet a new friend. Great book. Thanks. Secular Monk, Project Hail Mary. You know, there's a lot of science fiction snobs out there that will say, "No, it's a terribly written book," and I'm like, "Look, man, it's not like I said. It's not like what Hal Clements didn't he write Phases of? No, that was Dan Simmons. Mission of Gravity. Hal Clements' Mission of Gravity. No, I mean it's whatever. It's populist science fiction, and you can if you want to read great space opera, you can go ahead, read Werner Vinge's A Fire Upon the Deep, or read Peter Hamilton. Go right ahead, or read Samuel Delaney's Dahlgren. You go do that. Or you can read Project Hail Mary, and you can really enjoy yourself. And Project Hail Mary is exactly what it's supposed to be. Jason Ashcroft says, do Brian and I stay in touch? Yes. Brian's traveling all over the place all the time, but I've always stayed in touch with him. I mean, I've been friends with the guy for 35 years. I made 4. So I did X-Men 1.5, X2. Dave Parker and I did X-Men 1, X2, and then we did Superman Returns and The Usual Suspects. So you can watch our documentaries. They were re-released both on the Arrow Usual Suspects last year and the Kino Lorber, if you want to get our special features that we did originally for Usual Suspects back in 2001. Yeah, I've known Brian for 35 years. So yeah, he was on Midnight Metal last weekend. He called into the show. I texted him and he called in and I wanted to talk to him because it was the 25th anniversary of X-Men and Superman Returns as well. So yeah, and I'm proud to be friends with Bryan Singer for all the work that I've done for him and all the things that we've been through over the years. So I'd love for him to come back and make another movie. King's Portal, right? King's Portal? Or Port Cal? King's Port Cal? Can Gunn do the Tower of Babel story arc? You mean the Justice League story arc? I mean, you could. I'd like to see that. I think that would be actually pretty cool. That'd be, I think, a great story arc. Listen, I'm going to read a letter or 2 or 3. This letter comes from Desmond Harris. Desmond Harris, he says, "Hello, Toy Man. I hope this message finds you and your family well in your sector of the galaxy." Hang on, let me just blow this up a little bit. "I wanted to share a few outside observations and would appreciate any insights you might be open to offering. Please note, I'm not seeking confirmation or denial. I fully respect that the internal strategy remains within the private professional sphere, and that part of the enjoyment for the audience lies in the unfolding experience when all has properly released, rather than everything must be explained away and spoon-fed to the audience. From what I have observed, the recent resurgence of Predator and Alien properties suggests that the commercial team is taking a long-term, big-picture approach, not just reviving interest, but repositioning these IPs through creative expansion. Given the leadership at Fox, with its strong balance of commercial vision and storytelling awareness, I sense that we may eventually see a meaningful intersection of franchises such as Alien, Predator, and Blade Runner. Well, I think you're absolutely right. Such a move could deepen the universe by focusing over the shoulders of the corporate engines using the androids, synthetics, Weyland-Yutani, Terrell, etc., while allowing new characters and human characters to continually emerge as we pass by them and evolve within those stories, reducing stale rehashes. This would avoid reliance on one-dimensional cameos or self-referencing for niche audience clapping instead of long-term storytelling. Just some outside thoughts I wanted to share. Kind regards, Desmond. P.S. I also sent you a Star Wars commercial analysis email. I have that. I just haven't read it yet. I will get to that. But first of all, you have to take Blade Runner out of this equation. Blade Runner is owned by Warner Brothers. So, I don't know. As far as I know, the only other movie that officially, well, sort of officially, crossed over with the Blade Runner universe was Soldier. The movie Soldier with Kurt Russell. Because you see like a spinner in the junk pile of this planet. So, and that's, it's just a quick little throwaway reference, but supposedly that the movie Soldier is from the Blade Runner universe. But as we've seen, very interesting, both in Alien Earth and in Predator Badlands, those movies are essentially firmly set within the Alien universe or the Predator universe, call it what you want. I think it's great. And I do think between Alien Earth, what's going on there, and what's going on with Predator Badlands, I think they... Look, the president of 20th Century Fox right now, Steve Asbell, I like to call him the quiet king of franchises, he knows what's up. He knows what's up. As a matter of fact, I was texting with him the other day, and I said to him, I go, you know, I've got your trilogy for the next Planet of the Apes movies, and I told him, so you have Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. The next 3 movies has to be Empire of the Planet of the Apes, Crusade for the Planet of the Apes, and Fall of the Planet of the Apes. And they're all about Charlemagne. You've got to go Charlemagne and the conquest of the Western Roman Empire. That's and then the Crusades. There's your 3 ape movies. And at the end, at Fall of the Planet of the Apes, you're into the ape dark ages, where it would give rise to the ape society and humans are totally cast out. And you've got the religious and the scientists and Dr. Zaius. So you have the ape dark ages, and Fall of the Planet of the Apes. Planet of the Apes takes you right in to the original Planet of the Apes. I don't know if Steve's going to go with that, but that's what I told him. I think Josh Friedman's in charge of wherever they take the Apes franchise. But that's my idea. That's Mike Bodden's idea. Empire of the Planet of the Apes, Crusade for the Planet of the Apes, and Fall of the Planet of the Apes. There's a trilogy. By the way, my phone, you want to call me? I'm here. But what Steve Asbell is doing, I think, with and his collaborators, you know, the Predator Killer of Killers was terrific. I loved it. And Predator Badlands looks terrific as well. And the fact that they're getting involved in the synthetics side of all of this is really, really cool. Human minds being put into synthetic bodies, which is something they really hadn't been dealing with yet. I think what they're doing, between what Noah Hawley's doing, which Steve Asbell doesn't really control, but what they're doing over on the film side of things, look, man, they can go back. What I would like to see is that original Dark Horse Alien versus Predator comic adapted, because that was great. They should have done that in the first place. So maybe they will. Who knows? I don't know. But as much as I was disappointed in Alien Romulus, I do think that I understand it wasn't horrible. You know, it was all right. I just thought it was kind of too much of a rehash for me. There's so much you can do in those movies. I just thought I wanted more. Kind of like, you know, in Interview with a Vampire. I want more. You know, little Kirsten Dunst killing people. I love it. I love Interview with a Vampire. Do I have that in 4K? I forget. That movie's great. I love it. J.D. Richard writes in and says, first, apologies for any spelling errors. I just hit the couch after band. I'm typing this on my phone, and I will not be spell checking. Laugh out loud. That's okay. Why is it so hard for people to understand why films fail? I've watched yourself, Campia, and hundreds of others talk about changing customers, the theater experience, etc. And yes, in some respects, valid. But no one is really discussing the actual issue. Shit writing. Amen. Alfred Hitchcock's famous quote, you need 3 things to have a good movie. A script, a script, a script. Didn't Godard say what you need to have a good movie is a girl and a gun? But a script is good. There have always been amazing movies that fail to find an audience at launch. I don't know that will ever change. There will always be horrible movies that bomb. That will never change. The real change is that with social media, the average film, the meh film, the it was okay films, well, we know it's average or below average. And there are so many films with so much money invested in a property where the name on the poster is expected to sell the product and they've just forgotten step 1, the script. You have people that have never read the comics, never read the book, refused to watch the original, and so on, believing themselves to be great writers. And in truth, we get average. We get meh. And time again. Every time they talk about no one's coming back to theaters, movies are dead, and then Barbenheimer, John Wick, Sinners. Hell, not the theater, but look at the explosion of K-pop Demon Hunters. The same month that the meh of Elio bombs. Average will no longer succeed. And I think in truth, Hollywood came to expect average to succeed. But with average, with Average no longer succeeding, and I think in truth Hollywood came to expect Average to succeed, the audience in most cases waiting to hear what's awesome. Look at Sinners, a great movie that had the YouTube buzzing, and the audiences followed. Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon made bank, following damn near to the letter of the originals, while Snow White goes full meh and it bombs. I love the content. Stay awesome. Stay fly. J.D. Richard. Wow. I think you're right. Look, I think part of the problem, at least in my lifetime, in my nearly 6 decades on this planet, I think that what we have seen is a shift in education in this country. And I think that, like, for me, when I was a kid, I grew up on a place called Mercer Island, Washington, a suburb of Seattle that I could never even afford to live on now. But I was from there, and we had a very good public school system. And in our public school system, and when I was growing up, it was understood that a great general education was what you needed to get through life. And when I say a great general education system, a great education and a great education system, you know, we had a very robust curriculum, and we had great teachers, and you know, my parents expected a lot of me. Like, if I fucked up in school, it was my fault. Like, you were expected to work. You were expected to study. You were expected to write papers. There was a lot expected of you, but that was what was normal for school. And having seen and grown up now, or seen kids grow up around me, the rigors of school that I experienced is not the case today. And I mean, school used to stress me the fuck out. Like, it was rough, man. But it was supposed to be rough. And getting a general education is its own reward. I mean, the idea, you watch those videos on YouTube where people go, they ask you questions like, what ocean is to the left of the United States? And nobody knows. I mean, I'm like, the most basic things that we all learned in elementary school. And part of that rigorous education was reading. There was a lot of reading. You read articles now that college students getting into Ivy League schools can't read books. They're used to reading. That to me is mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. Like, to not read books is, I can't imagine what my life would have been like if I wasn't reading books growing up. I mean, and I read books for pleasure. I always was reading something. I had stacks of things in the bathroom. When I was growing up in my house, nobody bothered you in the bathroom. It was the best lit. My mom, if I was reading under my covers with a flashlight, my mom would come in and find me, but nobody bothered you in the bathroom until I was like 13. What are you doing in there? Sometimes I wanted to answer just what you think, even though I was, you know, had the latest horror novel or whatever, or the box I got from the Science Fiction Book Club. I mean, I just think people are not learning the way they used to learn. And a lot of it, I think, has to do with money. You know, a great general education is its own reward. You know, you need a smart, healthy populace to make sure your country, to me, I would make American health and I would make American education the front line of our national defense. Because in this world, we're going to get our asses kicked by other countries like China and India, where the kids will do the work. You know, and we're going to wonder what happened to American innovation. Well, it went elsewhere. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact how we approach general education. And I think you're seeing it certainly in the writing of, say, Star Trek. Oh, my God. I question, you know, so not good. I think I have one more letter I was going to read. Let me find it. Let me grab it. I accidentally sent it. I sent it into the cornfield. If you're a Twilight Zone fan, you're a bad man. Let's see. I knew I had another missing out. I'm missing out on the third letter I was going to read. Hold on, let me grab it. Let me see if I can find it here. I can't. I had this out, and I don't know where it is, so I apologize. I'll just leave it at that. I've read those 2 letters, and I'll find more later and read them on the next show. S-Beam has been a member for 54 months. 54 months. That's amazing. Jason Ashcroft asks, did your friendship change with Bryan Singer when he got super famous with X-Men? Sorry if it's too personal. I'm just super interested how you got to know him. Oh, well, I'll tell you. So okay. So we were both at USC, but I didn't really know him in school. But there was a group, it still exists now, called the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films. And it was founded by Dr. Donald Reed. And his right-hand man, Robert Holguin, who runs the Academy now after Dr. Reed passed away. So the Academy would have screenings every Sunday, and they would show usually 3 upcoming movies, and filmmakers would come and speak, and they would screen those movies at Norris Cinema on the USC campus. So I started meeting Bryan at those events and talking to him, and this was, you're talking circa 89, 90, and so we became friends. And what was really interesting is and you became like movie buddies. So Bryan hadn't done anything at that point. Now, Bryan grew up with Chris McQuarrie and Ethan Hawke in Princeton, New Jersey. And Bryan made a movie. He made a short film that Chris McQuarrie wrote that Ethan Hawke, Chris McQuarrie, and Bryan are actually in. And it was, I think it's a half an hour, a little less than a half an hour. It's called The Lion's Den. And it was a really great movie about these friends coming back together at the Lion's Den was like a Denny's, an all-night diner. And the movie was about these friends coming together after they had been away at college for a year. And the movie was really accomplished. It was really well done. So this is how Bryan did it. Here's a great story for you all. I think I've told this before on this show. So Bryan had made this movie. And then Arthur Borman, who had made another film called And God Spoke, had made a short film. And God Spoke is a funny movie about the making of a biblical epic. And then there was a third filmmaker. So they had these 3 short films. And he was going to have an industry screening for these 3 short films. Now, to get the industry to show up for short films or any kind of a thing like that is tough. But Bryan and his compatriots did something very smart. They got a bunch of money. And they rented out the brand new Directors Guild. And they got Sam Raimi to host this screening, which gave them all the legitimacy they needed. And then they did, the brilliant stroke here was that they had full food and a full bar. Very expensive, very expensive. The Directors Guild, a very prestigious location. So they sent out word because Sam Raimi was hosting, and they invited managers and agents and things like that. And once the screening was sold out, they took out trade ads in Variety and the Hollywood Reporter. 3 new visions. Come see 3 breakthrough filmmakers. So the people that weren't already going to the screening, the whole town was calling up trying to get in on the screening. They're like, oh, sorry, it's full. And so everybody was abuzz. Sam Raimi was hosting this screening, and I mean, he hadn't made the Spider-Man movies yet. This is the early 90s. How can we get in? And nobody, and that screening was a mob scene. It was a mob scene. And people were sitting in the aisles, and then afterwards, everybody stayed and ate and drank, and you're at the Directors Guild, and it was quite the hobnobby scene. And after that screening, Bryan's film was very accomplished. It was really good. Remember, Chris McQuarrie, wrote it. And then within a few days, a Japanese company gave Bryan $250,000 to make whatever he wanted to make. The only caveat was that the Japanese company owned it. And so Bryan and Chris wrote a script, and Bryan directed this movie called Public Access, which is hard to get. But Public Access, really interesting movie about this stranger that comes into town and sets up, it's kind of like a Twilight Zone episode in a way, starts a public access TV show, and he starts exposing the town's dark secrets, everybody's secrets. And there's little needful things kind of in there, and the town kind of goes a little crazy. Well, that movie that they made for $250,000, shared the grand prize at Sundance. It shared the grand prize. They tied the two films, top films tied. The other movie that won was Ruby in Paradise, which was what's her face's? She was Chris Shahala's Ashley Judd. It was Ashley Judd's breakthrough role, and those movies shared the grand prize at the Sundance Film Festival. And based on that, he was able to raise the financing to make a movie called The Usual Suspects. So Public Access came out in 93, I believe. Usual Suspects was 95, and it won 2 Academy Awards, one for Best Supporting Actor for Kevin Spacey and one for Chris McQuarrie's screenplay. Now, you asked me, did Brian change? I mean, after Suspects, he made Apt Pupil, and then he was tapped to direct X-Men. Brian's really been the same guy he's always been. He's had incredible success. He's made a shit ton of money. He had an incredible lawyer, and he had a great team making sure he made the right business decisions. But he's pretty much always been the same guy. He was very focused and wanted to make, and Brian's never hidden who he is. He wanted to make movies, and he liked to have a good time. And everyone knew it. There was no subterfuge in Brian's life, and I think a lot of people never understood that. He made no bones about it. I'd go out with him. We'd go to the Fiesta Cantina in West Hollywood, and we'd meet a lot of hot dudes there. I'm straight, but I can hang with anybody. But we'd all hang out back at Brian's apartment. He's like, or house at that time. Now he's a huge compound, and it's like, come on over. Suddenly I'm surrounded by 50 hot dudes, and we're all partying at Brian's house. But he's always been that way. And, he's, as I've said, he got me jobs. I didn't even ask for him. He got me, the only time I ever called him, I was called by MGM to do the Usual Suspects special edition because somebody knew I was friends with him, and I was already working on special features, and I was working for a company called Curdy Pellerin, and we hadn't started working on Lord of the Rings yet, but I got a call from MGM, and they wanted to do special features. Tom Grain, who was doing special features, but they couldn't get Brian and Kevin Spacey, and so I got a call. Couldn't you get Brian involved? I'm like, yeah. Or they did get Kevin Spacey. They couldn't get Brian, and they couldn't get Gabriel Byrne, and so I did. I went and Dave Parker and Kerry David went and produced the special features for The Usual Suspects. I got a lot of good reviews, and then I got a call from Fox going, "You're going to do X-Men 1.5, and you're going to do X2," and I'm like, okay. So, yeah, but that's the thing. I mean, I'm still friends with Brian because I like him, respect him. We work together, and I've known him since before he'd ever made a movie. And that's kind of that's how I got to know him. But we got to know each other because we were fans. We really were at the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films, and we would go to dinner, and we'd go to the Magic Castle with Dr. Reed, and that's how we got to know each other. That was kind of true of a lot of relationships that I had in the early 90s, and a lot of my friends went on. People like Eric Wallace. My friend Eric Wallace started working at Spelling, and he worked his way up. He was the showrunner of Flash. Dan Weber went and worked for... we all used to write for this magazine called Sci-Fi Universe that Larry Flint published in the mid-90s, and we went and did all kinds of things. Sonny Dominguez asks if the details for the PGS meet and greet have been discussed. They really have not. I will be down, as I said, I'll be doing 2 panels on Thursday, so we'll probably have a meet and greet on Thursday and afterwards on Friday after Max Allan Collins. But I'll know tomorrow. I'll do a show tomorrow, and I'll have that all figured out. Artificially Stupid Intelligence says, I know Campy doesn't like anime. Can you put him on some dope Adult Swim? Smiling Friends, Common Side Effects, Rick and Morty, and Primal. You can't make people watch things that they don't want to watch, and it's tough. I mean, my taste, I don't watch a lot of animation. I do like certain. I mean, I'm old school when I watch anime, but like I'll see something like Pluto. I watched Pluto and I was blown away by that, and that was 2023. But I'm so old school. Gundam, Macross, Robotech, but Space Battleship Yamato, aka Star Blazers, which, by the way, Space Battleship Yamato Rebel 3199. There's a new date for the rest of that. Can't wait for that. That remake since 2012, man. Woo, they've been great. But he should read some more or watch more anime. I Am Jax 12. A couple of books you'd recommend this gen read. I don't know which gen. A couple of books. Look, I'll give you a non-genre book. I think everybody should read Donna Tartt's The Secret History. If you're of college age or older, maybe not even younger, Donna Tartt's The Secret History is a book that I absolutely adore, and I would kill to see David Fincher do the movie adaptation. It is not science fiction horror. It's about these kids at an elite college and their philosophy teacher. I know it might not sound riveting to some, but it is. It's terrific. I always tend to recommend the same books to people. Like the Hyperion Cantos, obviously. It depends what you want. But if you want, look, science fiction classics are always good to read. I mean, if you like Dune, I would suggest reading all 6 Frank Herbert's Dune novels. Dune, Dune Messiah, Children of Dune, God Emperor of Dune, Heretics of Dune, and Chapter House Dune. Because they get really weird, and if you like the Dune universe, those are books to read. Look, the 3 Body Problem books are really great. And I can't believe that we're getting the TV series of books 2 and 3. Or AKA the Remembrance of Earth's Past trilogy. But I don't know. It's hard to say. There's so many great science fiction novels. When people ask me, it's always, I love my classic science fiction. You can't go wrong with. I'll tell you something. I really like Stephen Baxter's Manifold Space and Manifold Time books. I didn't like Manifold Origin so much, but what's really interesting about his books, Manifold Space and Manifold Time, they have like all the same characters, but each book is totally different. Like they're in different universes, but the characters are the same. And the main character of those books is named Reed Malenfant. I always thought Malenfant was a cool last name for somebody. Malenfant. When I was on the few dating sites I was on, that was my name on the dating site, was Reed Malenfant. And you know what? No one ever asked me where I got that name from. Well, I'll tell you all, people. It came from Stephen Baxter's Manifold Space, Manifold Time, and Manifold Origin trilogy. So if you ever see that on a dating site, well, that will be me, but that'll be an old site. But hey, there you go. Reed Malenfant. Those books I really enjoyed. But there's so many great... I don't read so much. Modern science fiction is hard for me to find books that I like because so much of it is it's all fantasy now, and it's not as idea driven. Hey, if you haven't read it, everybody should read Neil Stephenson's Snow Crash. One of the most entertaining books I've ever read in my life. Snow Crash is incredible. As a matter of fact, a lot of Neil Stephenson's books are incredible. Yeah, but Snow Crash, and then, we're going to get a Neuromancer TV series. So if you haven't delved into the father of cyberpunk, William Gibson, and if you haven't read Neuromancer, Count Zero, and Mona Lisa Overdrive, by the way, Mona Lisa Overdrive is a slang term for a woman's orgasm. I put her into Mona Lisa Overdrive. Come on, that's the greatest euphemism ever. But those books are great, and I like Gibson. But yeah, there's so many books. But I have to stop. I need to make a reading list. Because everybody always asks me, "Are you gonna make a reading list?" So, but I really need to do that because I haven't done that. Lamar Reynolds says, "Do you have Gattaca on physical copy?" This is what I always say to people who ask me questions like that. Come on, man. Of course I do. I've got the Gattaca 4K Steelbook. I love Gattaca. Gattaca's great. Yes, but I do have that. Thoughts on B Thing says thoughts on the unending film versus digital debate. Here's the thing. Cinema has been an evolving form since it began in the late 1800s. I mean, at first it wasn't even 24 frames a second. They didn't even know, they hadn't even settled on a frame rate. So all through the whole, since cinema has been around, I mean, we're less than 100 years into the sound era of film. And you went from, you had color tinting, then you had color, then you had, well, first you had black and white, then you had color tinting, then you had sound, then you had color, and then you had different kinds of film stocks, and then you went from the Academy ratio to larger aspect ratios, 1:6:6, 1:8:5, 1:2:3:5, all the way out to Super Panavision. So you had widescreen and anamorphic aspect ratios. And then you had stereophonic sound, which turned into Dolby Digital and DTS. So film has constantly evolved with technology. Film is essentially something that they came up with in the 1800s. So the idea of celluloid and running at 24 frames, and then they tried things like the first time, I'll tell you something, the first time, Douglas Trumbull, the great Douglas Trumbull, who is the effects supervisor, like he worked on the visual effects of 2001: A Space Odyssey, he worked on Star Trek: The Motion Picture, he did Close Encounters, he directed Silent Running, he directed Brainstorm. So Douglas Trumbull was the first person to come up with the idea of high frame rate movies. And the thing he came up with something that was called show scan. And what they were going to do, show scan ran at 60 frames a second. And for you gamers out there, you understand why that was important. And so the first time that I saw film, now he's shooting on celluloid at 60 frames a second. So imagine when you're running at 24 frames a second, how a film camera sounds, but imagine how a film camera sounds when it's running at 60 frames. I mean, when you watch high-speed camera photography, it's like, zzz, it's crazy. But the first time I saw high frame rate and show scan was at the 1986 World's Fair that was in Vancouver, BC, in Canada. And the Canadian government had made a tourism movie shot in show scan to promote Canadian tourism. And I went and saw it because I wanted to see what show scan looked like. And so we were in the theater, and it was wild. It was wild because when the movie started, and I'll never forget this, there was a shot looking down. The camera was on the top of a bow of a ship, and it was looking right down, or at the bow. It was looking right down at the bow of the ship. So you saw the bow of the ship, and you saw water, the bow of the ship going through the ocean or whatever. It looked like I was outside on that ship. It was such a weird, disconcerting feeling because it looked like I was looking outside a window at an actual ship. Because the reason that film runs at 24 frames a second is because, remember, film is just a succession of still images, and the movement is an illusion that is caused by the way we see, persistence of vision. And that's film is just is the way it worked with celluloid, is it's a series of still images run next to each other. The way we see, the way our brain perceives images, you get persistence of vision and movement. Well, when you're looking at something at 60 frames a second, there's no more persistence of vision anymore. It's so fast that it looks like reality, in a nutshell. And it was the weirdest thing, man. It was fucking weird. And I was trying to put together, it wasn't a movie. You're looking at reality. And what it made me realize was that the format of celluloid itself, running at 24 frames a second, there is a distance between reality and what is filmed. And what happens is, for rightly or wrongly, that distance, I need it. We need that distance. And you have filmmakers like James Cameron and Peter Jackson when they started experimenting with high frame rate, like the Hobbit movies. I went and saw An Unexpected Journey, the high frame rate. I was actually in Copenhagen for Christmas. I was there for 2 weeks seeing my friend Sina and her daughter Sophie, and we went to see The Hobbit in HFR. And it like people say, it looked like a soap opera. No, it looked like you were there. It looked like you were watching a play. The distance between you as the viewer and the movie that you're watching, whatever that thing is, there was no more distance. So it's like you were on the set watching them film it. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Now, when it comes to, say, like Avatar, because none of it's real, we saw clips from Avatar Fire and Ash at CinemaCon, and it was in 3D HFR. High frame rate, 3D, but it's still, it has that, the soap opera look or the hyper-real look, call it what you want. But because you're on Pandora and it was much more palatable, it was dope, man. I can't wait to see. Look, I'm an Avatar fan. I don't give a fuck. I don't care what anyone says. Ferngully in space, whatever. It's an amazing technical feat. I enjoy it. So it's classical storytelling. It's really, I don't care. And give me, like I've said, Mordor orcs. The Na'vi live in front of the Mount Doom volcano, and they don't believe in Iowa. And I'm like, bring it on. It looks awesome. There was an aerial battle. I'm sure the trailer that we're going to see in front of Fantastic Four shows some of it. But so what you asked me about ultimately is film versus digital. Digital is the future. I mean, I love the look of film, but it's only because I grew up with it and have had it forever. I would say it's really interesting now that we're getting movies in 4K. I was watching Barry Lyndon, which is a fantastic Kubrick movie, one of my favorite Kubrick movies. The 4K is amazing, but you can see the grain, and which I love. Grain was celluloid. That's part of, people are like, I don't like the grain. I don't, that means you didn't watch movies before 1993, 94, 95. It's so weird when people say, I don't like grain. I mean, that was inherent to the image. That was filmed for 100 years. So what's really interesting is when you watch, like David Fincher swears by digital, and I would not tell him not to, but he's created his own look, since he went digital. David Lynch, or he was not married to cinema. And I think it really depends on how the medium is used. I mean, I like film, but it's cumbersome and it's time consuming. And we've got digital cameras now that are so incredible. But I know that there is there's a romanticism. I'll watch anything. Like when I saw, don't get me wrong, when I saw The Hateful Eight on film, that shit was dope. I mean, Quentin Tarantino is shooting on film. His films look incredible. He gets Bob Richardson to shoot the Kill Bill movies. They're amazing on film. He's never going to shoot on digital. He's going to make one more movie, and he's going to shoot on film. But I think it depends. It depends on who's using the medium and how they're going to use it. But to me, I don't have a romanticism about film because film looked at film. I like Kodak stocks better than Fiji stocks or Fuji stocks. Fiji's the island than Fuji stocks. And I've directed one movie and we got to use these new Kodak Vision stocks and they were incredible. I like true prime lenses. I like shooting on fixed focal lengths. I don't like using zooms. I'm a John Carpenter guy. I'm a John McTiernan guy. We shoot with anamorphic primes. I like that look. I couldn't stand when J.J. Abrams made Super 8 and he didn't use the right anamorphic primes. I'm like, those are the wrong lens flares, dude. You have lens flares and they're wrong. Those are not true anamorphic prime lens flares. Why are you shooting it that way? Thomas Logan says, tell us all about Singer's Logan's Run remake. Yes, when Brian was finishing up Superman Returns, this is not a lot of people know this, but Brian had a previs department that was prevising. Chris McQuarrie had written the latest script of Logan's Run remake. And if you're Gundam fans, if you know what sides are, or the Babylon 5, Brian's Logan's Run took place in an orbital a cylindrical, the guy who created that, his name starts with, I think, a G. Why am I drawing a blank on his name? I'll figure it out. But it all took place in an orbiting space colony. And it was pretty rad, to be honest. And it took place, the script opened with the Yellowstone, Yellowstone blew up. The super volcano blew up and basically destroyed the world. And the survivors lived in this orbiting thing, and it told the story of Logan's Run. There was an incredible scene. The carousel scene was in zero gravity, because as you moved into the cylinder, there was no gravity in the center. So the carousel scene, when people are going through carousel, it was awesome. You got to see their bodies once they renewed or whatever. Their bodies were taken into it was like it was a machine room, and every part, the skin was stripped off the body, the muscles, everything was recycled, and it was awesome. It's just like, I'm like, oh man, I want to see that. And he prevised a lot of it, and before John Schnepp died, John Schnepp he made his movie about Tim Burton's Superman. He was doing a whole series, and I was part of it, where he was documenting these movies that never got made. Like we did a whole segment on Sam Hamm had written Watchmen that Terry Gilliam was going to direct, and we did a segment on that. We did Brian's Logan's Run. We went to Brian's house and filmed him for an afternoon, which was a lot of fun. And the Unmade Jetsons movie, all kinds of things. It's too bad we didn't get to do that. Artificially Stupid Intelligence says, have you seen The Expanse, the game that's coming out? It's like Mass Effect, but better. It makes me, I did. You know what I watched? It was a playthrough or a trailer, this new Expanse video game. It looked great. It looked really good. It looked like the Expanse universe. It looked really amazing. So, yeah, I would totally want to see that. It's like Mass Effect, but better. It makes me want to read the books. Only seen the show. It looks like the sci-fi game everyone always wanted. Yeah, I would highly recommend reading the books. There's a huge time jump in the books, and the last 3 books take place like 40 years later, and it's pretty interesting. So if you're fans, yeah. Artificially Stupid Intelligence says, if you haven't already, play Cyberpunk 2077. It will blow your mind. It's a single-player Blade Runner, as close as fracking possible. Now, okay, I got Cyberpunk 2077 when it first came out, and it had problems, and I did update my game, but I haven't played it in a long time. But it was cool. I really liked it, and they made a Keanu Reeves hot toy from it. I liked that game. It was really, really good. Alex Montano, where have you been? Where have you been, Alex? I hope all is well with you. Alex, are you still living in? You're in Colombia, right? How are things? How are things with you? Oh my God! I was thinking about you the other day. There you are. You think about you, and there you are. 200 Watt Studio says, "What did you think of Nomads?" I got it yesterday. Nomads. I haven't got. That's another thing I forgot to order. I think I forgot to order. I don't even remember anymore. So Nomads was John McTiernan's first film. And I think it's a really, Pierce Brosnan stars in it, and he wrote it too. And it's a real interesting spin on indigenous people. I like it. I haven't got the disc yet though, 200 Watt Studio. I have to check and see if I thought I ordered it. I thought I went to that company and ordered it, but I like the movie. I'll tell you something. I own the movie on Laserdisc. And I have not watched it. I know because I haven't had my Laserdisc player hooked up for 25 years. So I've got my disc. I just haven't seen it. I haven't got the 4K though. I need to get it. So, yeah. There you go. Nomads. John McTiernan. Poor John McTiernan. I really wish that after he got out of jail that somebody would have given him a chance. He made that chance. He made that really cool gaming commercial. And I don't know I forget what it was actually for. But, yeah. But listen, I think I'm going to end this. I'm babbling. Babbling on. Speaking of Babylon 5. So I'm going to end this stream. I'll be back tomorrow, but I probably won't be here Thursday and Friday. I might be here Saturday to do a member call. I'm not sure yet. And I'll know where the meetup is going to be. But I will be back tomorrow. And it's going to be a big week for Fantastic Four. I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank... there was a lot of people here tonight. So that was, it's kind of an impromptu show. I wanted to talk about Superman. So thank you all for being here. What do you guys think? Why has Superman become so? What's all the infighting? We're living through we have everything. We're living through a golden age. Okay, can I just reiterate? Talk about books. It is amazing to me that we are getting 2 adaptations of Richard Bachman, aka Stephen King's. We're getting 2 Bachman book adaptations. So all of you remember that beginning in the 70s, Stephen King wanted to see, after he had achieved success, if people would buy his work simply because of the writing, if they didn't know it was him. So Stephen King published 4 books 4 paperbacks under the title of Richard Bachman. Rage, The Long Walk, Roadwork, and The Running Man. I don't know, in 4 years. I think The Running Man came out in 82. The Long Walk came out in 79. I don't remember when Roadwork came out, and Rage came out before that. So anyway, everyone remembers the Arnold Schwarzenegger, Richard Dawson adaptation of The Running Man. Well, when Stephen King wrote his 5th Richard Bachman book, it was the first one that was coming out as a hardcover, and that was thinner. Somebody suspected that Stephen King was Richard Bachman. The first time I heard this idea was my friend Shade Roop, who used to write letters to Stephen King in the early 80s. He went to a different junior high. There was 2 junior highs on Mercer Island. There was North Mercer and South Mercer. I went to South Mercer. Shade went to North Mercer. But we were friends because we were movie fanatics, and I met him at a video store. And he was a grade below me. And he came to me once, and he said, and we were Stephen King fanatics, and he goes, I think Richard Bachman is Stephen King. And this is I want to say this is 81 or 82, and I'm like, get out of town. Why do you say that? And on the cover of The Long Walk, you have the character of Garrity. He's standing there walking, they almost look like they're walking zombies or something. And there's a number, like you're in a marathon race, running a runner's number. And the number was 47 on the cover of it's the red paperback cover with black writing, but then there's a painting of it. And it said 47, and then in the book, he showed me that one of the characters, I think whether it was Garrity, lived at East Broadway. And at the time, Stephen King had either a return address or I don't know what the address was, but Stephen King's address that he was writing my friend Shade from was 47 East Broadway. And Shade's convinced. He's like, Richard Bachman is Stephen King. And I fucking didn't believe him. There's no way. And he said, he's hiding it in plain sight. And I was like, no way. Cut to, I think Thinner came out in 85. So Long Walk came out in 79. I read it in 80. And that's probably when I was talking, 80, 81, when I was talking to Shade about this. And this was 4 years before he was revealed as being Richard Bachman. But anyway, I've wanted to see The Long Walk turned into a movie. I mean, with everything that Stephen King has written, I read The Long Walk in 1980. I got it in my library at South Mercer Junior High School. That's where I found the book. That's my first experience with the Bachman books. I found it in the library. Of course, I went and bought one. So it's been 45 years. So for 45 years, I've wanted to see The Long Walk made. And Frank Darabont had the rights to it for a very long time. But obviously he didn't make it. And producer Roy Lee got it. And Francis Lawrence, who directed Constantine, and of course he did Hunger Games movies. And yeah, Francis Lawrence is dope. He directed I Am Legend, the Will Smith version. But by the way, that's a book you should all read. If you haven't read Richard Matheson's original I Am Legend, which has now been filmed 3 times, but no one has come close to that book. It's a quick book. It's an awesome book. Read Matheson's I Am Legend. But anyway, so we're getting the Long Walk. And we're also getting Edgar Wright has readapted the Richard Bachman book, The Running Man, which is the 4th Richard Bachman book. the Richard Dawson movie bared no resemblance to the actual book of The Running Man. And The Running Man is much closer to another movie, if you haven't seen it, from the 60s, The 10th Victim. Elio Petri's, he directed that movie. It stars Elizabeth, Ursula Andress, and Marcello Mastroianni. And that's very much like Battle Royale. The Running Man is like The Hunger Games. And The Running Man looks great. It looks much closer to... if you were to told me that we were going to get 2 Richard Bachman books adaptations this year, I would have said you're fucking nuts. But we are. How cool is that? Like, as far as being fans, getting 2 Richard Bachman books and getting a real Edgar Wright adapting The Running Man and getting Francis Lawrence to adapt The Long Walk, I can't believe it. I mean, to be honest, this is an amazing time for me personally, just being a fan of stuff. Getting a 3rd Dune movie. We're getting a Foundation TV. The Foundation season 3 is great, by the way. That series has gotten better and better. We're getting a new season of For All Mankind. We're getting the spinoff Star City. The only thing, it's ironic, the only thing that I hate now is my very favorite franchise of all time, Star Trek, is I mean, I know a lot of people like it, but it's garbage. It has nothing to say. It's completely empty-headed. It is a walking corpse of Star Trek. It's the Vegas showgirl version of Star Trek. It is brain dead, and all they do is rip off old Star Trek episodes badly. The 2nd episode of this season, like I said, it rips off 3 different episodes of Star Trek. I mean, 1, but 3? They just, let's bring back Trelane. Let's bring back Roger Corby. Let's not do that. Not do that. Why don't you write an original show? Oh, it's Akiva Goldsman. You can't. Akiva Goldsman can only adapt things badly. Except he got lucky once with A Beautiful Mind. He didn't come up with that. He came up, he got to adapt it, and it worked out. So you go, Akiva Goldsman. But Lost in Space, fail. Batman and Robin, fail. Star Trek, fail. You're terrible. Don't get away from Star Trek. Go wreck Mark Halpern's A Soldier of a Great War. No, don't do that. I'm kidding. That's a good book to read. You know what? Here's a rando book to read. There's an author named Robert Goddard. This is not a genre book at all, but it's a book called Impale Battalions. Impale Battalions. I really like that book a lot. It has nothing to do with the genre. It's not science fiction, fantasy, or horror. It's historical. Impale Battalions is great. And you know what? Matt Reeves and his crew, if they ever, a movie that I was trying to get the rights to and then right from under me, they're never going to make it. Clifford D. Simak's book, Waystation. A movie I would love to direct that I was trying to get the rights to when they republished the book, but clearly somebody else thought the same thing and went and got the rights first. But once I read they're going to make it into an epic science fiction story, I'm like, nah, that's wrong. Not good. So, anyway. Oh, and if you really want to read another great book that I would dearly love to make into it's got to be a 7-season series. It's only 2 books. You've got to read Greg Bear's A Forge of God, but we're not going to make that into a movie. And then the second book, Anvil of Stars. So The Forge of God and Anvil of Stars. They're both great, but Anvil of Stars should be the show, and you'll see when you read it. Those 2 books, one's kind of a setup, and the reason Anvil of Stars has never gotten made is because everybody tries to retell A Forge of God in the first 30 pages of their Anvil of Stars script, and it's like, you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. But anyway, if you want, that's a great 2-book set about the end of the world and its aftermath. So, The Forge of God and Anvil of Stars by Greg Bear. Read those. Those are good. There's so many great books. And if you like serial killer novels and you're a Canadian, Michael Slade's Special X series. There's another series of books for you. And Headhunter, Ghoul, Cutthroat, and Ripper. If you like Silence of the Lambs. And he's been updating them because Headhunter came out in 1984, so it's really dated in terms of its technology. But who would have ever thought that Canadian history and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police could be combined into an amazing series of serial killer novels? I certainly didn't, and you know what's funny? I talk to Canadians about this, and they don't know what I'm talking about. I'm like, you've never read the Special X books? And they're by a pen. The pen name is a guy named Michael Slade, and his fans are called Sladists. And I'll take it. Anyway, I'm just babbling now. Star Trek Lower Decks animated is the best thing in a long time. It's literally a love letter to Star Trek. Yeah, it's not original. It's not. It's a show that's made. It's a show made by people going, look at how cool Star Trek is. I mean, it's fine. It's fine. But I'd like a real Star Trek show. A real Star Trek show that sells provocative, hard-hitting science fiction ideas, allegorical ideas. Make an original show that boldly goes where no Star Trek show has gone before. 200 Watt Studios says they should make a series from the Gateway books, Frederick Pohl's Gateway books. That was one of the first books I ever got from the Science Fiction Book Club. Frederick Pohl, P-H-O-L, Gateway. Those books are good. I like those books. Man, I haven't read those in a long time. That's elementary school. William Powell says, Rob, I'm coming to your 1985 panel. There you will be abducted for our interview. Well, I have a panel right after that interview. So it's got to be after that panel, which is the Inglorious Trexperts panel. But I'm happy to do the interview after that. And on that note, this crackpot is going to say goodbye and good night to all of you. I want to thank you so much for generously supporting this channel via Super Chats and tips. Thank you to all the new subscribers. I very much appreciate that. If you want to write letters, just like it says down there, just put Robservations in the title and then what your subject heading is and send in to me. Send in the clowns. Send me that letter and I'll read it on the air. And if I haven't got to your letter yet, that doesn't mean I don't have it. It just means that, I look around before the show. Yeah. So there you go, everyone. And by the way, if you've never, I just got this. If you've never heard of the Quatermass movies, this is the first one, the Quatermass Experiment. Then there's Quatermass 2, the Quatermass and the Pit. These are all about Dr. Quatermass. These are classic sci-fi horror films starting in the 50s, going into the 60s. And then there was even a wild TV series in like 1980. John Carpenter was a huge fan. He used the name Martin Quatermass even though it was him, as the screenwriter of his great movie Prince of Darkness. So if this is a new 4K box set of the Quatermass Experiment that came out from Hammer. It's a really, 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 this is a really beautiful set of the films. Look at that artwork. And this is it's a great movie. And if you haven't seen the Quatermass, actually Quatermass 2 is even better than Quatermass 1. It's very Night of the Living Dead meets Aliens. But if you've never seen the Quatermass movies, hey, look them up on Wikipedia, read about them, and check them out. It's great that they are being put out in beautiful editions. But check out the Quatermass series. It's a great series. And if you haven't heard of it, you haven't seen it, and you like classic sci-fi and horror, we're talking 50s and 60s. It's like the British invasion of the body snatchers, kind of, but not really. But it's good stuff. So check it out. Now let's see. Wow, people have been sending in things. Let me just make sure I don't miss anyone's super chats. Nope, we're good. So I'm going to end the show. Thank you, everybody. I want to thank my moderating staff. I want to thank Tom Jr. Jackson, Darth Plato, whoever else is here. Thanks for doing that. And, Darth Plato says that there are tips. I was looking at tips. I don't know why tips aren't coming through when I look at them. Hang on. Let me see about tips. I'm going to use a different browser. Maybe a different browser will make it easier to look at tips. So hold on. I would imagine you sent a tip in, Darth Plato? I will make sure. Let me get to that because I don't want to miss anyone's tips. Hang on. So let me try this. And I will go back here. I will log in. And I know this is scintillating YouTube content. But let me see. So tips. Make sure I don't miss any tips. I'm looking. I'm not seeing. Oh, wow, your tips were way back here. Darth Plato. They are Darth Plato tips. He says, it would have been funny if Superman said, "What underwear?" That would have been funny. The TVA is coming for Superman, says Darth Plato. By the way, Jen, I want to know you know what? I can't leave this show without finding out Jen McMahon asked about Supertramp was in Superman the movie. I've got to find out which, for Jen. We're going to do this for Jen. We're going to find out which Supertramp song was in Superman the movie. Let's find out. I want to know. I just don't remember. I'm sure somebody in the chat already has it, but we'll see. Give a little bit. Give a little bit. Give a little bit. Oh, that's really funny. I didn't know. It appears during a scene where Superman is rescuing people, according to the Ultimate Classic Rock. And that's from their album, what's it called? Even in the Quietest Moments, right? Give a little bit. There you go. Jen, give a little bit. That's a good trivia question. Supertramps, give a little bit. Now that I remember that, I mean, it's funny. That's a good thing to know. So, Jen, thank you for writing that super chat in. Now we all are smarter. So, Give a Little Bit by Supertramp was in Superman the movie. And Darth Plato says the TVA he knows he's pissing me off by mentioning the TVA. Okay, I'm out of here. I'm just babbling. This is not scintillating YouTube content. I'm sorry. Can't wait to hear what everyone thinks Fantastic Four. I will see you tomorrow night. Remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to all of you, have a better night.